How many people here today know about remote viewing? Well, it's probably most of you, so I don't need to go into too much detail about what it is, even though today we'll be talking about how to apply it when it comes to the future, and how it's possible using your mind and a piece of paper to jump ahead in time, months or even years, and download your own trajectory or that of others. It's pretty amazing, life-changing stuff. So before we get into it, let me give you some quick background on it and my involvement in it over the last 26 years, for those that may not know. First off, let me say this. After doing this for more than a quarter of a century, thousands of projects that range from murder and missing persons cases to predicting stock market moves, sports betting picks with a very high accuracy, remote viewing, it's not just a fantasy. This is not some made-up New Age thing where you lay back and meditate and let images and visions come to you like some teachers want you to believe. This is a trained skill that was developed inside U.S. military intelligence in the 80s and brought into the civilian world when SciTech was founded in 1989. I got into this in the mid-90s, and I bought SciTech from the founders in the year 2000. Since then, I've trained 30,000 people via our videotape series, online at TRV University, and in person. And I believe technical remote viewing, or TRV as we call it, is the most powerful mind technology ever created. Not just because you can gather intelligence on enemy targets or because of what it can do in your personal and professional life, which we're going to go over today, but what it means for humanity in awakening a part of us that lies dormant. Our psi apparatus, which is actually part of our natural instinct intuition function, which is underdeveloped. Probably even more so in our modern technological society, and the more we relied on it to survive. Intuition is the way our mind-body system collects information. It just does so in a different way than our intellect or our five senses do. How TRV works is it imposes a language onto this instinct intuition function, which has never happened before in human history. And by doing so, it trains it. It gives your psi function a way to communicate with your intellectual mind and brings impressions and ideas that you're able to download with your psi apparatus into a form that you can use, which are images and sketches or words from your personal thesaurus. So the first question most people have, and this is a common one, is this the same as being psychic? And then the second question is, well, what can I do with it? Let me answer these two questions. The first being, is this the same as being psychic? And the answer to that is yes and no. This is psychically derived data, yes, and yes, the source of it is the same for a natural psychic as it is for a trained remote viewer. The difference is, and it's a big difference, is that a remote viewer is able to grab the data on demand using a target. Whereas psychic, it's hit or miss. And even if they try and they do access it, it may or may not be accurate, as it's usually highly contaminated by their imagination. The breakthrough that was made at Stanford Research Institute in the 80s, and this was a major breakthrough, is that running a specific protocol of stages and giving the psi apparatus a specific language or operating system allowed most anyone to be trained in accessing the collective unconscious and downloading data from a predetermined target. And even a newly trained TRVer is usually more accurate than the best natural psychic. So we don't consider ourselves psychics. And in fact, some of the best remote viewers in the world are about as psychic as a rock. What makes this work is installing the TRV reflex, as we call it, as it is a skill. And once trained in this skill, it's repeatable on demand. The next question, what can you do with it? What are some of the applications? Because you can access and download information on any person, place, thing, or event, anywhere in time or space, you can find out most anything about everything. There are a few limitations, numbers being one of them, and there's a reason why that is, and we'll get into that later. But what makes TRV so incredible and useful is the ability to collect information on things that are otherwise impossible to know or find out, like the really big questions about God or are we alone in the universe, things like that. Because we're not limited by time, we can go into the past and access data on any person, place, or event. We can TRV the resurrection event, for example, and find out if that really happened. We can go back in time and find out who really built the pyramids, things like that. I once had a client who wanted to know who invented astrology and how it was done in ancient times. The reason he wanted to know this is because he was a world-renowned researcher on the topic and he was writing a book. But there was no historical documents or records of how this occurred. So we were able to fill in that story. An example of how TRV is so useful to provide intelligence on things that there's no other way to know about. Most people are interested in using TRV to solve a problem, or make money, or find out about their future. And this is the reason they hire us and pay us to find out. And at SciTech, that's what we do. We sell professional TRV services with reports that provide data and analysis that gives our client a solution to their problem, whatever that may be. And often that means jumping ahead in time to download a best case scenario or an optimum strategy of what they want to know or do, like the trajectory of an investment. Maybe they're about to buy gold futures and they want to know where gold is heading in the next 6 to 12 months. Maybe it's the trajectory of a new crypto coin or a what-if scenario. Hey, if I build this product, what's the best way I can sell it? An inventor has an idea for an energy device and there are technology gaps that he needs to find out. And we can literally look at the trajectory of that specific invention and see what its future is and what problems have to be solved to bring it to market. I've been doing targets like this for more than 2 decades, and I'm still blown away by what you can uncover and how TRV delivers it. Okay, someone's asking, can I find out about a medical problem that's a mystery to my doctors? Well, the answer to that question is yes. We've done it hundreds of cases over the years involving medical mysteries. Western medicine is great at patching people up after a car crash, but not so good at solving chronic health problems. So with TRV, it's really an information tool to find out things that medical diagnosis can't. We often do optimum treatment cure trajectories, is what it's called, to give someone things that are totally outside the box that are often overlooked. Like the gal who had a strange rash that wouldn't go away, and the data said, go sit on a beach. So she did that, and sure enough, the rash went away. The reason it turns out was the oxygen content was higher there. So she got O2 treatments after that, and the cause of the rash went away permanently. Or the guy who was facing surgery versus radiation and wanted to know what his optimum was for that situation. We even had a world-renowned neurosurgeon who was trained, and he used his skill preoperatively to determine outcomes and what things he should be looking out for in the surgery, in addition to all his other tools like MRIs and X-rays. Okay, so let's drill down now to what about your future and how can you know it? And then change it. The future, turns out, is a curious thing. And I've remote viewed future events thousands of times, and my team and I have even remote viewed how the future works. I wanted to know if it was all free will or if there was anything predestined, and if so, how we humans can interact with it. And here's what I learned. The future isn't fixed. It's not locked in. There really is a field of probabilities, and we do interact with those probabilities, just like the Schrodinger's cat experiment. Think of it like a tree with branches extending outward, and every decision you make moves you into a different branch. In TRV, we call these branches and sub-branches gateways. And it seems that once a gateway gets opened, that branch of the trajectory unfolds and gets locked in. It's really quite fascinating. And there are these markers, as we call them, that the data provides that reveals that gateway event so you can recognize it. An example might be you have an opportunity to go to a conference. And at that conference, you'll meet the love of your life. And your entire life path from that moment on is changed. You might choose not to go to that conference, and then that trajectory might never happen. The conference is a gateway. And assuming this is your optimum trajectory, going to that conference is optimum because once that gateway is open, that trajectory becomes locked and you meet, you fall in love, and you live happily ever after. Without having TRV and knowing that gateway even exists for you, life seems more random. You might have still gone to that conference and things unfolded in an optimum way, but having this knowledge gives you a tremendous advantage in life. How these trajectories seem to work is that most of us have free will, and trajectories seem to unfold a certain way based on the choices you make and the gateways you walk through. There's a strange order to all this. And as remote viewers, you start to experience that by getting to peek around the corner. Most people experience life like a pinball, being bounced about from event to event, and they never really have a sense of direction or meaning within their personal path in life. It just seems random. Anyway, this is all a fascinating topic because there is more order to things than we can see. It's almost as if invisible hands are kind of nudging us along at times. And one of the most profound TRV sessions I ever did was on the topic of free will versus destiny. And what I got was mind-blowing. I got that it seems we humans are allowed, and that was the actual word in the data set, allowed, to have free will within a predestined structure. Like there's this meta program that's running and we're all in it, like in the Matrix movies. Anyway, what I found over the years is that people tend to have a pull towards certain paths or trajectories. As remote viewers, the most asked thing we do for clients is their optimum trajectory, which is the path where you're most fulfilled. Doesn't necessarily mean it's the easiest, but it's the most meaningful, where your highest potential, happiness, and purpose all align. This isn't about money, although we can cue targets specifically for that too, which is very different than an optimum trajectory. Optimum means optimum. There's nothing higher. And in TRV, when we do one of these, we're going to your specific book in the collective unconscious, and we're going to that specific page in your book about your future. Think of it like a cosmic search engine, pulling data from your book of life. And we teach you how to do this in the TRV training program. And we teach not just the theory about how all this works, but we install the skill and train the reflex that causes the bilocation to occur where half of your attention is at the matrix target site, downloading the data, and the other half of your conscious attention is objectifying it on paper. Let me give you a few real-world examples of an optimum trajectory and how it worked. Years ago, we were working with a retired architect living in Hawaii. He was bored and nearly out of money and didn't know what to do with the rest of his life. So we did his OT, his optimum trajectory. The data came back with one clear idea. It said, tree houses. He looked at us and said, and walked away. Then the next morning, he was up at 5:30 out building tree houses on his land. A few months later, he was running the first treehouse bed and breakfast on the island. 2 years after that, he was flying around the world designing luxury treehouse resorts. He made a great living, but more importantly, he found joy in what he was doing. Another case, a couple in New York, both successful attorneys, came to us burned out from the rat race. Their OT pointed to organic farming, specifically in Georgia. So they drove south, and within 3 weeks, they found a farm that matched the session data, bought it, walked away from their legal careers, and happily ever after. That was 20 years ago. I still hear from them every now and then, and they've never looked back and are living their dream life. Most of us all have a best case future, a personal optimum trajectory. Not all, but what most people are actually living is their current trajectory. They're maybe doing okay, but they're not enthusiastically and ecstatically happy and fulfilled. And that's the point of doing this work, because when you know what that is, you're on fire every single day. You awake with purpose and passion and just feel good about being alive. Same is true with knowing your optimum mate. Not everyone has one, but if you do, and you find him or her, life just isn't any better than that. Once you're on your OT and you're living it, whether that's a career, the place you live, your life mission, whatever it may be, it's like stepping onto a train that's moving toward your best possible destination. It's like there's a groove in the matrix, is what we call it, and things just fall into place. You just have to find the gateway, that station to get on board your train to end up on your optimum trajectory. Okay, well that was just a brush stroke of what TRV can do in a few applications where the future is accessible with TRV, but this is all still scratching the surface of what's possible. If you want to see what else we can do with it, you can visit the SciTech website, which is psitech.net, and also the newly revised TRV basic training, which is being produced now, and you'll be able to take that course and install the skill and experience it yourself firsthand. For Zygon Premium members, this course is free for a limited time. You can check out the website or the app for the details. Okay, a couple of questions before we close this out. How is TRV different from being intuitive or psychic? Well, we talked about that already. And the key is that TRV has a systematic way to deal with imagination, which will contaminate your data. And TRV, which is a skill, is on demand. When you do a session, it looks more like you're solving a math problem. There is no lay back and let the visions come to you. In fact, if you see visions, that's mostly imagination. And TRV doesn't work that way. Okay, next one. Can anyone learn to remote view, or do you need a special gift? Well, we alluded to that already, and that was the breakthrough discovery at SRI, Stanford Research Institute, was that anyone with average intelligence could be trained to do this. All humans have a psi muscle, it just needs to be developed. Okay? Can I TRV the Super Bowl, and how accurate is it? Answer, yes you can. This is a powerful predictive tool, and what's fun about doing sports is that the feedback is instant. So you can do a session a few hours before the game and are able to download all the metrics of the winning team. Then in your analysis, you weigh the data and determine the winner. We've done thousands of sporting events over the last 30 years and do the Super Bowl every year, and we only missed it once. For highly skilled viewers, the accuracy rate is 85% or greater. In fact, I have a friend who's a viewer I trained who was ex-military intelligence, and he has TRV'd over 1,000 contests himself, and he's more like 93% accurate in basketball, which he specialized in. Okay, a final question. Someone's asking, what about the lottery? Well, everyone asks this question, and the answer is no, because TRV doesn't work well with numbers. And the reason is twofold. One, you can't get numbers because the mind has difficulty objectifying a number. And even more important is that the number has no significance or meaning in the matrix, or the collective unconscious. It's like if you put a can of Coke on your desk, and this has happened to me more than once, where someone wanted to test our skills and said, hey, I'm going to put something on my desk, and you TRV it and tell me what it is, and then I'll hire you. Well, the can of Coke on the desk is the hardest target there is. And the reason is because there's no novelty to it. It's so common and has no meaning or significance that there's no spike that a TRVer can grab onto, which is the signal line. And that's what we call it, and it's very, very weak on a target like that. Doesn't mean it's not possible, just very difficult. Now, a super easy target is a UFO event. Why? Well, because it's extremely novel, and the mind loves novelty. Targets involving people are also novel. Every person in the world is distinct and unique, and so people are easier to TRV than objects or things. Okay, well, that's about all the time we have for today. If you have any other questions and you want more information on taking the TRV basic training, we'll be making an announcement soon. If you want to do this, I would encourage you to sign up for premium membership now. This Unreal promotion we have going on will expire in a couple of weeks and you'll miss out. What I want to leave you with today is something to think about regarding your future, and it's this. The future isn't something that happens to you. It's something you create. Every decision, every action, Every belief you hold is shaping the timeline you're about to live. Most people just drift. But if you become a remote viewer, you'll no longer be guessing which path to take. You'll know. Life takes on a new clarity and meaning, not just knowing what's around the next corner, which is valuable, but the highest possible future version of your life. And once you can know that, all that's left is to get on that train going in that direction. Thanks for being here. I hope to see you on the inside.